diesel, the same plan, same picture came out in the front page again. Klang Valley commuters can expect a much improved public transportation system. So it rings absolutely hollow that these things are not being done first, then we increase the fuel price. Rather, we increase the fuel price and hope that the people forget about a new public transportation system.
If I may interject. Firstly, if the public transportation system needs years, decades, for it to be good enough in your book, then when then can subsidies be reduced? If you believe in principle, then when does your principle actually get translated into action?
My simple point was that 3 years ago this was a problem that had been raised, and this was a problem that the government itself recognized. They need to build a quality public transportation system. But within that past 3 years, absolutely nothing was done. Absolutely nothing. And if something had been done, we might have had new lines cutting across Utara, etc., more densely populated areas like that.
Thank you. I think since we're in a position of 2 versus 1 now, I think I'll just jump to where we think it's possible. Are you happy with the current measures taken by the government to ease the inflationary pressures as expressed by Tony, especially perhaps with regards to food subsidies? Would you like more to be done?
Well, I think just a broad perspective that must be provided at the beginning. I think that of course in the long run, subsidies has its problems. There are a lot of unintended consequences and whatnot. But whether we like it or not, we are starting from a position where subsidies have been given, and any effort to reform subsidies there must be a long-term plan. You can't every few months suddenly announce, okay, this is the new fuel subsidy policy, and then suddenly, yesterday you announced something else. People don't know what to expect. So I think there must be a long-term plan, comprehensive plan looking at subsidies from food, fuel, and whatnot. And I think I agree with Tony where for example, if we really need to reduce subsidies for fuel, then there must be complementary policies to ease the burden beyond just rebates for cars, which I think is very little compared to the savings that the government claims they have.
Is it just the amount that bothers you, or the concept of rebates themselves?
No, I mean there are probably better ways to address those issues, whereby, for example, I would say, Ghana had to reduce its fuel subsidies, and in lieu of that, they introduced, they abolished school fees, they introduced new welfare systems and whatnot. It was a much more comprehensive system, and it was the same with Jordan, where they reformed their entire social welfare program following the reduction of fuel subsidies. So I think countries like Jordan and Ghana can do it. I'm sure that Malaysia can do better.
Thank you very much. I feel a little bit under siege here because I'm sandwiched between two PR guys. It's a bit stacked 2 against 1. You might as well have invited a pass guy as well, make it 3 against 1. But seeing how Amno and Pass are talking these days, I might as well represent Pass today. Anyway, back to the point. Yeah, back to the point of subsidies. I think generally, I'm quite surprised because we're all in agreement about the philosophical case for removing subsidies or gradually removing subsidies. The only issue here is now the timing, how it was done, and what measures have been put in place to reduce the burden on the people. Now, I would argue, and Tony knows this very well, that when petrol prices were increased at the pump 2 years ago, in 2006, there was savings of about 4 billion ringgit. And you know this very well, Tony, that within a few months, the price of oil on the international market rose to such an extent that that 4 billion ringgit saving was wiped out almost entirely. What was left was only about, I think, 700 to 800 million ringgit, which was spent on buying new buses for Rapid KL, about 1,000 plus buses for Rapid KL. So you can't just assume that there are savings and that savings will be there forever without actually those savings being eroded by increase in the international price of petrol. Secondly, why was it done without any comprehensive social safety net? I would argue that, on the contrary, there's quite a lot that has been done in tandem with the restructuring of the subsidy that has helped people, not just the rebate. If you talk about the savings from this time around, it's about 14 billion ringgit. Now about 6.7 billion of that has gone to food security, food subsidies, to make sure that the price of cooking oil, the price of rice is stable and is at a manageable level. 5 billion ringgit from 14 billion has been plowed back into rebates. The rebates that YB Nick spoke of earlier. Actually, 6 billion ringgit has gone back into these rebates for cars and for motorcyclists. So to say that nothing has been done to ease the burden of the public in tandem with the restructuring of the subsidy scheme is, I think, not entirely accurate. You have to look at the entire package in totality, look at how we've managed to increase subsidy, we've managed to increase, not subsidies, but assistance for the poor. We've managed to increase the level of subsidies given for food, because don't forget, today we're not confronted just by a petrol crisis, i.e. higher oil prices internationally, but also higher food prices. It's two in crisis, both higher oil prices as well as food prices internationally. So I think if you take it in totality, not just restructuring of fuel subsidies, but also in terms of increased assistance and subsidies for food, which to me is a far more essential item than petrol, then I think you would agree that some of it has been cushioned. As far as public transport is concerned, I completely agree. There's no one in this room, I think, who will disagree with the fact that we need better public transport in the Klang Valley. But at the same time, before we plow more money in, we need a regulator to regulate public transport in the city, especially in the Klang Valley. Without a regulator, public transport today is being run by the Ministry of Entrepreneurial and Cooperative Development, DBKL, it's being run by LRT, Utara, which is under the Ministry of Finance. There's no one regulator. You need a regulator to instill competition, to divvy up the routes, because not all routes, not all bus routes are profitable. So some operators will have to get the profitable routes and the non-profitable routes. So it's a lot more complex than we assume it is. So until and unless we have a regulator, which I'm told the government is going to come up with not too long from now, then only then will we think about increasing the investments needed for public transport in the Klang Valley. Thank you.
I asked Tony when he mentioned that we needed an efficient public transport system, and I asked him what if it takes decades. I'll ask you something on, that I think is fair. Should all of this have been done earlier? The measures of improving regulation and what you said, should have this all been done earlier? Follow-up question.
Okay. Should have been done? Of course it should have been done earlier. I mean, if you take, I was telling YB Tony and YB Nick just now that I used to take the public transport when I was working in KL, and I take the monorail from Jalan Sultan Ismail to KL Central. And the wonderful thing about the monorail is that it takes you there, you beat the traffic, but you don't actually end up in KL Central, you end up in brickfields. And you have to walk across the road to go to KL Central. That's an example where you spent a lot of money in a so-called integrated public transport system, LRT, Utara, monorail, and buses. But there's no interconnectivity, or at least there is very little interconnectivity. For those of us who live or study in London or other parts of the world, you know that you can walk out your houses, hop onto a bus, and you're at the tube stop in 5 minutes and you're off. So in terms of interconnectivity, in terms of regulation, competition, for example, bus routes today, only one operator, Rapid KL, which is owned by the government. So why not have competition? But if you want to have competition, you need regulation, because not all routes are profitable. So some people will have to take the profitable routes, and others will also have to take the non-profitable routes for this to work. So it is a work in progress. It is something that needs to be done urgently, and I don't know why it's not been done before.
Thank you, KHAIRY. Maybe Tony, I know you're dying to respond to that, but I also got a question of my own. After hearing what KHAIRY said about how we're pumping back, the government is pumping back subsidies, savings from this fuel subsidy restructure, 14 billion or so, back to rebates and back to food subsidies. Do you not think it's fair to give the government some credit for that? It's not really true. It's not really true that they just completely cut down subsidies and that's that. It's actually been pumped back in other ways.
Let me just take the point about 4.4 billion. I think one of the biggest concerns is whenever you say 30 cents increase, last time they promised 4.4 billion public transport fund, but because oil prices has way surpassed what was the prices at point in time, so the 4.4 billion essentially disappeared. Let me also tell you that at the same time, when world oil prices increase, net revenue for the government increases as well.